As the chaos in Ukraine continues, I'm going to be here to bring you the information. Ukraine tells Russia invasion means war as Putin lays the groundwork. Ukraine told Russia that a military invasion would be an act of war. And to me, there is no other way to put it. If troops from a foreign army are coming into your land, that is an invasion. There is no way that that would ever make any sense to me. And they're talking about the one word that nobody wants to discuss. Anyone who's for what's happening right now with Russia. Sovereignty. The sovereignty of a nation is destroyed when you allow troops from a foreign army to come onto your land. When they allow certain trade agreements, there is sovereignty lost. There is sovereignty lost in every which way. The UN is allows destruction of our sovereignty. The IMF, which I'll get into in a separate video, is the culprit for a loss of sovereignty, and that's what's happening. It's happening in every country, whether in the US, in Canada, wherever. There's a loss of sovereignty taking place, and that's happening right now as we speak. We're watching this. Putin ready to invade Ukraine. Kiev warns of war. So Putin sends in the troops. At the same time, the Prime Minister says, this is an act of war. Now, to me, this is war. I don't know what's so difficult. At the same time, Kiev was appealing to NATO for help. The Ukraine specifically was appealing to NATO for help. And that really brings in another thing into this picture here. At the same time, as I mentioned earlier, Obama warns Russia against Ukraine intervention, says, quote, there will be costs. That is a little convoluted, but I would have to say that that would be a threat, that there will be costs associated with an intervention as they are doing right now. They have intervened. You can see this. This is Russian military on the streets in the Ukraine. One of the things I'd like to mention is that although the US and the EU are definitely separate from the Ukraine, they do have trade agreements. They do trade technically right now already. So if I'm just pulling up some articles. The EU has negotiated a deep and comprehensive free trade agreement, and it goes on, and they're trying to work on more free trade agreements with the EU, as well as the US doing some trade with the Ukraine. Certainly not the biggest partner, but they do trade. So they are, in a way, partners, and they do deal with each other. But there's something much bigger going on here. Whatever happens on the war front here, there is another type of war, and that is a currency war, and that is a manipulation of the system in general, the whole financial system. And the criminals in charge of that are the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. They are about to go into Ukraine right now, and they're about to do what they call wide range reforms. And what that means is a complete raping of the people. I'm going to have to get into this on a separate video altogether, so I hope you will join me for that as well. I'm talking about what the IMF does, what they do every single time. I wrote about it in my book. There are so many books that talk about it specifically, and then they will engage the IMF riot, how I've discussed in other videos. This is not going to be good for the Ukraine. They tend to give them money, and that money is given to them at an interest rate they can never possibly pay back. So many individuals have discussed this, and historically this never works. The IMF is there to destroy, and whoever gets put in place in the government who basically suggest that this should happen, they are the criminals on the inside. They're the mole. They're the ones who are giving up the sovereignty of the nation.